Hello, Catriona. Hello, Isla. It's Daddy. Next part of Treasure Island Pirate Story. So this bit is now chapter 3 and it's the Black Spot. So we find out what happened after the captain met the black dog yesterday. So I'm going to start with the new story now. Chapter 3, The Black Spot. About noon at the captain's door with some cooling drinks and medicines, he was lying very much as we had left him, only a little higher, and he seemed both weak and excited. "Jim," he said, "you're the only one that's here worth anything, and you know I've always been good to you. Never a month, but I've given you a silver fourpenny for yourself, and now you see, mate, I'm pretty low and deserted. By all, and by Jim, bring me one more noggin of rum now, won't you, matey?" "The doctor," I began, but he broke in, cursing the doctor in a feeble voice, but heartily. "Doctors is all swabs," he said, "and that doctor there, why, he don't know much about seafaring men. I've been in places as hot as pitch, and mates dropping round with Yellow Jack, and the blessed land a-heaving like the sea with earthquakes. What do the doctor know of lands like that? And I lived on rum, I tell you. It's been meat and drink and man and wife to me, and if I'm not to have my rum now, I'm a poor old hulk on a lee shore. My blood'll be on you, Jim, and that doctor's a swab." And he ran on again for a while with curses. "Look, Jim, how me fingers fidgeties." And he continued in the pleading tone, "I can't keep him still, not I. I haven't had a drop this blessed day. That doctor's a fool, I tell you. If I don't have a drain of rum, Jim, I'll have the horrors. I've seen some of 'em already. I've seen an old flint in the corner there, behind you, as plain as print. I've seen him, and if I get the horrors, I'm a man as lived through rough, and I'll raise Cain. Your doctor himself said one glass won't hurt me. I'll give you a golden guinea for a noggin. Jim, my lad." He was growing more and more excited, and this alarmed me, for my father, who was very low that day, needed quiet. Besides, I was assured by the doctor's words, and now quoted to me, and rather offended by the offer of a bribe. "I want none of your money," said I, "but what you owe my father. I'll get you one glass and no more." Then I brought it out to him. He seized it greedily and drank it all in one gulp. "Aye, aye," said he, "that's some better sure enough. And now, matey, did that doctor say how long I was to lie here in this old berth?" "A week at least," said I. "Thunder!" he cried. "A week! I can't do that. I'll have the black spot in me by then. The lubbers is going to get the wind of me in this blessed moment. Lubbers as couldn't keep what they've got, and want to nail what is another's. Is that seamanly behaviour, now I want to know? But I'm a saving soul. I never wasted good money of mine, nor lost it either. I'll trick him again. I'm not afraid of him. I'll shake out another reef, matey, and dawdle him again." And thus speaking, he had risen from the bed with great difficulty, holding my shoulder with a grip that almost made me cry out, and moving his legs like so much dead weight. His words, spirited as they were in meaning, contrasted sadly with the weakness of the voice in which they were uttered. He paused, and when he got into a sitting position on the edge, he said, "That doctor's done me," he murmured. "My ears is singing, lay me on me back." Before I could do so much to help him, he'd fallen back again to his former place, where he lay for a while silent. "Jim," he said at length, "you saw that seafaring man today?" "Black dog?" I asked. "Ah, black dog," said he. "He's a bad un, but there's worse than him put upon now. Now, if I can't get away nohow, and they tip me the black spot, mind you, it's my old sea chest they're after. You get on a horse, you can, can't you? Well then, you get on a horse and go to... Well, yes, I will. To that eternal Doctor Swab, and tell him to pipe all hands, magistrates and sich, and he'll lay him aboard at the Admiral Benbow. All old Flint's crew, man and boy, all of them that's left. I his first mate I was, old Flint's first mate. And I'm the only one as knows the place. He gave it to me at Savannah. Then he lay a-dying like as I was to you now, you see. But I won't peach unless they get the black spot on me, or unless you see what Black Dog does again. Or any other seafaring man, particularly one with one leg, Jim, him above all." "But what is the black spot, Captain?" I asked. "That's a summons, mate. I'll tell you if you get that. But you keep your weather eye open, Jim, and I'll share with you equals upon my honour." He wandered a little longer, his voice growing weaker, but soon after I had given him his medicine, which he took like a child without remark. "If ever a seaman wanted drugs, it's me," he said, and at last fell into a heavy swoon-like sleep, in which I left him. What I should have done, had all gone well, I do not know. Probably I should have told the whole story to the doctor, for I was in mortal fear lest the captain should repent of his confessions and make an end of me. But as things fell out, my poor father died quite suddenly that evening, which put all other matters on one side. Our natural distress, the visits of the neighbours, the arranging of the funeral, and all the work of the inn to be carried on in the meanwhile kept me so busy that I scarcely had time to think of the captain, far less be afraid of him. He got downstairs the next morning, to be sure, and he had his meals as usual, although he ate little and had more, I'm afraid, than his usual supply of rum. For he helped himself out of the bar, scowling and blowing through his nose, and no one dared cross him. On the night before the funeral, he was as drunk as ever, and it was shocking in that house of mourning to hear him singing away his ugly old sea-song. But weak as he was, we were all in fear of death of him, and the doctor was suddenly taken up with a case many miles away, and was never near the house after my father's death. I've said the captain was weak, and indeed he seemed rather to grow weaker than to regain his strength. He clambered up and down the stairs, and went from the parlour to the bar and back again, and sometimes put his nose out the door to smell the sea, holding on to the walls as he went for support, and breathing hard and fast like a man on a steep mountain. He never particularly addressed me, and it's my belief he had as good as forgotten his confidences, but his temper was more flighty, and allowing for his bodily weakness more violent than ever. In an alarming way now when he was drunk, of drawing his cutlass and laying it bare before him on the table. But with all that, he minded people less, and seemed to shut up in his own thoughts and rather wandering. Once, for instance, to our extreme wonder, he piped up to a different air, a kind of country love song that he must have learned in his youth before he'd begun to follow the sea. And so things passed until the day after the funeral, and about 3 of the clock of a bitter, foggy, frosty afternoon, I was standing at the door for a moment, full of sad thoughts about my father, when I saw someone drawing slowly near along the road. He was plainly blind, for he tapped before him with a stick, and wore a great green shade over his eyes and nose. He was hunched as if with the age of weakness, and wore a huge, old, tattered sea cloak with a hood that made him appear positively deformed. I never saw in my life a more dreadful-looking figure. He stopped a little from the inn, and raising his voice in an odd sing-song, addressed the air in front of him. Will any kind friend inform a poor blind man who has lost the precious sight in his eyes in the gracious defence of his native country, England, and God bless King George, where and what part of the country he may now be? You're at the Admiral Benbow, Black Hill Cove, my good man, said I. I hear a voice, said he, a young voice. Will you give me your hand, my kind young friend, and lead me in? I held out my hand, and the horrible, soft-spoken, eyeless creature gripped it in a moment like a vice. I was so startled that I struggled to withdraw, but the blind man pulled me close up to him with a single action of his arm. Now, boy, he said, take me in to the captain. Sir, said I, upon my word, I dare not. Oh, he sneered, that's it. Take me in straight, or I'll break your arm. He gave it as he spoke a wrench that made me cry out. Sir, said I, it is for yourself I mean. The captain is not what he used to be. He sits with a drawn cutlass. Another gentleman... Come now, march, interrupted he, and I never heard a voice so cruel, cold, and ugly as that blind man's. It cowed me more than the pain, and I began to obey him at once, walking straight in at the door and towards the parlour where the sick old buccaneer was sitting dazed with rum. The blind man clung close to me, holding in one iron fist and leading almost more of his weight on me than I could carry. Lead me straight up to him, and when I'm in view, cry out, here's a friend for you, Bill. If you don't, I'll do this. And with what he gave me a twitch that I thought would have made me faint. Between this and that, I was so utterly terrified by the blind beggar that I forgot my terror of the captain, and as I opened the parlour door, cried out the words he had ordered in a trembling voice. The poor captain raised his eyes, and at once the rum went out of him and left him staring sober. The expression of his face was not so much of a terror as of mortal sickness. He made a movement to rise, but I do not believe he had enough force left in his body. Now, Bill, sit where you are, said the beggar. If I can't see, I can't hear a finger stirring. Business is business. Hold out your left hand, boy. Take this left hand by the wrist and bring it near to my right. We both obeyed him to the letter, and I saw him pass something from the hollow of his hand that held his stick into the palm of the captain's, which closed upon it instantly. And now that's done, said the blind man, and at these words he suddenly left hold of me, and with incredible accuracy and nimbleness skipped out of the parlour and into the road, where as I stood motionless I could hear his stick go tap, 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 tapping in the distance. Tap, 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 tap. It was some time before either I or the captain seemed to gather our senses. But at length, and all about the same moment, I released his wrist, which I was still holding, and he drew in his hand, looking sharply into the palm. 10 o'clock, he cried. 6 hours. We'll do him yet. Then he sprang to his feet. Even as he did so, he reeled and put his hand to his throat, stood swaying for a moment, and then with a peculiar sound fell his whole height face foremost to the floor. I ran to him at once, calling to my mother, but haste was all in vain. The captain had been struck dead by thundering apoplexy. It's a curious thing to understand, for I had certainly never liked the man, though of late I had begun to pity him. But as soon as I saw that he was dead, I burst into a flood of tears. It was the second death I'd known, and the sorrow for the first was still fresh in my heart. So that's the end of chapter 3, The Black Spot. So Catriona and Isla, sleepy time now. You have a lovely sleep, and Daddy will read you the next part of the story for tomorrow night. Little bedtime story. Good night, Isla. Good night, Catriona. See you all very soon. Big hugs from Daddy. Good night. Love you.